Welcome back to another episode, all. Um, as I said before, I'm a critic of an intervention called Applied Behaviour Analysis, abbreviated as ABA. But I promised that I would offer you alternative interventions which you could use rather than leaving you with nothing. So in this episode, we're going to talk about an intervention called D.I.R, Floortime. What's better about D.I.R Floortime is it's more of a natural way of development, and it's actually rooted down in human development. It's written in three initials. The D stands for development. So already from this term development, we know that they are actually acknowledging that everyone is developmental and that development is lifelong. So we're already going into more of the natural way of things, going along with nature instead, rather than doing all this modifying, isolating behaviours and manipulating kids, rather than bribing kids through behaviourism. Instead, we're being more natural here. The I stands for individual differences. So in this part, we can see that this intervention, D.I.R Floortime, is embracing human diversity. It's actually allowing individuals to have their differences in their development. So they're not going by trying to push kids up to this, you must be able to speak by a certain age, or you must be able to do certain things by particular ages, milestones. This actually treats development as personal, that the development is a personal journey. And the R stands for relationship based. So this one is rather, it's rooted in relationships between you and your child. It's not rooted in a relationship of your child and a reward. Your child builds relationships with rewards in applied behaviour analysis, with things which are external. But with this being natural development, it's actually internal. And you use something called intrinsic motivation during it, which is far more better and more important than what ABA uses called extrinsic motivation. With applied behaviour analysis being all about only what you can see on the surface, it doesn't acknowledge development. So all the developmental processes which go on throughout our lives are disregarded in ABA, but they have been integrated into this intervention by Dr. Stanley Greenspan. They have. So these are some of the more up-to-date, such as when I spoke about music therapy, I shared of how music was more natural. It's natural expression and so on. And it's the same with these relationships. Such as, after all, we are social beings. So even though some autistic people are introverted, they'll prefer time to themselves, they still do need to have relationships with people. And especially for people like the parents, because that promotes healthy development. It promotes a social emotion, and it produces healthier development, not just for autistic kids, but for everyone. As I've mentioned, this whole model is rooted down to lay foundational stones for a healthy development. This isn't just all about behaviour. If you look online on a website about D.I.R Floortime and so on, you won't find yourself reading the term behaviour very regularly. From any resources which you get, whether it's a website, a book, a webinar, a YouTube video like this one, the more times the word behaviour appears, the more irrelevant and inadequate that intervention is. Because if it's always mentioned behaviour, 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 that means there's less space for it to talk about your child's needs. It's not so much about your child's development, since there's not enough space to talk about development. If it's talking about behaviour all the time, it doesn't have time to talk about the other important factors, such as the biological factors, such as the niche construction of how you build your child's environment to suit your child's mind. So you can't, such as when we think about non-human animals, would a polar bear be very healthy down in Brazil? No, we don't quite find them going down there, do we? So we see that the rest of nature, natural, it seeks environments that suit their needs. So what we also need to do in this for healthy development in this methodology is produce an environment that actually suits the autistic child's needs. So say if there's any irrelevant stimulants around that might be overstimulating your child, you might want to remove them. At least when your child is there. You want to get rid of any in order to prevent hypersensitivity or hypersensitivity. And by where this says development, it's actually about lifelong development and general human development as well as brain development. So we're already seeing here for the term human development and individual differences that this intervention embraces the whole human. It embraces emotions, it goes embracing the child's desires, the child's goals. It is child-centered, So the child is the top priority. It begins with the child. That's what makes this intervention a more effective and natural one. It is also led by the child, and so on. So by mentioning individual differences, you don't have to isolate all of your child's autism traits and so on. And there's even more effective things which come into it when we'll discuss of how the D.I.R Floortime is actually practiced. Because this is just a model of it, what I'm discussing at the minute. So what we've got is we've got the D for development, for lifetime development. And then we've got the I for individual differences. And the R for relationship based. So they're the three main characteristics of this model, which promote healthy human development. And that's one of the things which makes it more scientific, because we've discovered more about science now, about human development. This intervention has actually integrated other scientific professions into its field, rather than just being so isolated by itself. While ABA is just so isolated and is its own business. It's just a business ABA. That's why it bankrupts you if you've got an autistic child and are going to be forced and fear-mongered into ABA. ABA just likes to bankrupt people as it works with an autism hate group called Autism Speaks. Autism Speaks is not a group that supports autistic children. It does devastating advertisements. It's just such a terrible organisation. You don't want to go to their site to go getting sources and to find help, because they won't be helping your child. They'll be helping the non-autistic people. That's Autism Speaks' goal. They want to help non-autistic people, which is why they promote ABA, Autism Speaks does. But Autism Speaks does not promote any other interventions. Right, and as we'll move forward now onto how it is actually practiced, of how this intervention is used. This intervention, as where I've mentioned, it begins with the child. What you'll do is you'll do something similar to ABA, where you'll find what your child likes. But this is actually a very effective way, is where when you find what your child likes, ABA will take it from them The D.I.R Floortime will want your child to play with it, and will want you to interact and play with your child. If you just allow me to look something up, I'll show you why it is so effective to actually, and you'll actually see so many autism traits go away when you actually include your child's interest in the intervention. So I'm just going to read out a couple of statements from people who've done studies about, in the diagnostic criteria, they call it restricted and repetitive behaviours. Well, some of us refer to it as special interests, some just interests. But these ones are special interest areas, and they are great educational tools. So I'm just going to share a couple of quotes. Someone called Winter Messiahs and her colleagues found that talking about special interest reduced other autism traits. For example, children who spoke at first with flat affect became enthusiastic when discussing their special interest. They fidgeted less, made more eye contact, and their speech shifted from vague comments such as, I don't think so, I just whatever, to complex, vocabulary-rich statements. Many of the young people were also better able to initiate conversation and organise their thoughts. We found it across every single major area of deficit. Winter Messiah says it was incredible. So by asking individuals about their special interest, in this case, if you can identify your child's special interest, talk with your child about it, you'll see some of that stimming just go away by itself. Because your child gets more over enthusiastic, steamed up, and it gets real excited. Because they absolutely love their interest. And now I'll just go to a different part to quote another. This one goes more into the learning part of how your child's actually going to learn. I quote, "In one case, a second grade teacher gave a student books on Thomas the Tank Engine, her special interest, and in a couple of months, the child's reading comprehension had improved from a first to a mid-second grade level. In another instance, teachers used the child's interest in the Titanic to teach social skills, using the phrase iceberg right ahead to reinforce the importance of keeping one's distance. The tactic helped this boy remember not to stand too close to classmates. Preliminary results from an ongoing brain imaging study by Gabrielle's team support the potential utility of special interest as an educational tool. The team has been brain scanning children with and without autism while they listen to stories written by the study team that are about either their specific interest, soccer, dragons, and the like, or nature. So far, the researchers have tested 20 children. For the autistic children, listening to a story about their special interest activated key language regions in the brain much more strongly than hearing a nature tale. Because much of the learning that takes place at school is auditory, Gabrielle says the results suggest that working a special interest into a lesson could be a way to engage children with autism. End of quote. So these things that the medical model refers to in such negative terminology, such as restricted and repetitive behaviours, it's actually good to integrate these into teaching your child. You can help your child learn just about anything if you use their special interest. All you've got to do is figure out a way of how to link it together. I'm just going to quote from another book now, a bit more about D.I.R. Floortime, FIO, and a little bit about the special interest of what someone had to say. Forgive me for the time. Because his interest, where it said about getting great language, exercising the language regions, it does. And by doing so, by sparking and setting those language regions off, your child can learn language and speak. Right, I quote, to truly know a child or youth with autistic spectrum, one must know his or her SIA, special interest area. It is not enough just to acknowledge that interests are important to children and youth with AS. These children's interests define who they are. Interests represent safety, boundaries, and a measure of control. To punish the child by removing the cherished interest is, in essence, to strip the child of him or herself, and his or her source of comfort, soothing, and strength. Interests are more than hobbies or pastimes. Interests help them make sense of the world. So if we just quickly look through that again, what we see some very important things there, where these interests represent their safety. It gives them a feeling of safety, it does, over their anxiety. It helps them create boundaries, and it gives them a sense of control. When I discussed music therapy, when I shared some of the experiences by the National Autistic Society, that we're talking about some of the children gaining a sense of control. And that sense of control and stability really helps them. So all of these, and then when we get to the later part of it, it says it's their source of comfort, soothing, and strength. So in this case, by being the special interest, it can make traits like stimming go away. It can stop those behaviours. And with it being the special interest, it can increase language, vocabulary, and notice that this is based on their development. This is to do with the variation, the neurodiversity inside an autistic person's brain, due to all of this. So if your child's in a rather uncalm environment, having that interest actually soothes your child down and keeps them calm. And it can prevent those big meltdowns from going on, where your child might start hurting themselves or jump out to hurt others. So it can even stop that. And strength. So it actually gives your child strength, it does, and it helps them make sense of the world around them. Like on the study which I read about the teacher who used the Titanic, just by using his interest in the Titanic, saying iceberg ahead and so on, phrases like that, it helped him be able to make sense of keeping a distance from other people, helping him develop relationship with the D.I.R. Floortime model based in relationships. Relationships being included in it rather than just a therapist doing something to a child. So these interests of your children, they are great educational tools, great to help your kids learn. So you use them as much as you can with your kids, but there is a sad way you've got to be cautious there, because these interests can be all-consuming. These interests can. So your child might find it difficult to transition from their special interest to something else they have to do. Like if they get too fixated on it, rather than actually going to bed to go to sleep, they'll stay awake on the activity. And that's the risky part of a special interest. The fixation on it. But it may make them forget to do other important things. So you do need to be cautious with a special interest, but you can't take the special interest from them. You can use it as a tool, but try and reduce how much. Just reduce it, don't try and stop it. But make sure that it's at an appropriate level, that they're not too fixated onto it. Now, I'm going to read a bit about the D.I.R Floortime model from a book now. I quote, "One approach that seems to me to be more developmentally appropriate than ABA and a good example of niche construction is the Floortime model developed by child psychiatrist Stanley Greenspan and psychologist Serena Wieder. It is based on the idea that parents should pay attention to cues from their autistic children and set up naturally occurring scenarios of involvement where the child is encouraged to emotionally interact, solve problems, express needs, and in other ways move out into a meaningful engagement with the social world. This approach is more natural because it begins with the child, not with adult attempts to force interaction through external reinforcements. There's a lot of emphasis in Floortime on laughing, playing, and having a good time. Essentially, creating a positive social and emotional niche for the child. Greenspan writes, to facilitate engagement and relating, observe what kinds of interactions, silly sounds, kisses, tickles, or favourite games bring the baby or child pleasure. Peekaboo and hide the toy under the box are visual games that delight most babies, and rhythmic clapping games like patty cake will especially intrigue babies with auditory strengths. Moving trucks delight toddlers, and imaginative dramas bring joy to most preschoolers. Tune in to the baby's or child's rhythms, to his emotions and how he uses his senses and movements. These playful interactions are most helpful when done, according to Greenspan and Wieder, for at least 15 to 20 minutes, several times a day, when the child is most alert and available." A report on autism from the National Research Council suggests that the Floortime model is effective in developing basic capacities for thinking, communicating, and relating, and helps children use these skills in a wide range of natural situations. The Floortime model succeeds because it focuses on the positive behaviours of the child. Paying attention to the special interests of children on the autistic spectrum is, in fact, an excellent way of promoting niche construction. End of quote. So that's why I mentioned the special interest. On the first study I quoted, it showed that the kid stopped the stimming, they began talking more, they went from these little blurry noises into giving vocabulary rich statements. So when you've got your child's interest there, when you're with the child imitating your son or daughter, doing what they like, they'll be able to relate to you. So if your child will be familiar with you already, but then you need similarity. Because familiarity and similarity, as I said before, are the two main factors of attraction and who we relate to. So if you can imitate the child and do what the child's interested in, you'll develop that similarity and your child will want that relationship with you. And you'll be able to promote your child's development with the relationship, with their natural interest, the way their brain's developing naturally, as this model is rooted and grounded inside human development, which makes it even healthier. So this model is a very effective one. We see up to now it's brought human development in. It's brought psychology into it. It's brought relationships with children and so on into it. It's brought things like social skills into it. It's brought things where you, rather than trying to eliminate behaviours and isolating them and so on, you're actually building on their strengths, building their confidence. So you give your child confidence with this model by helping them see that they actually are good at something. Because they will be good at what they are interested in. So this model is just so effective. And across in America, in the US, there's a team called Psychological Bulletin. And this team goes around and it goes assessing all the sciences that there is to do. And it went to assess ABA and all the other autism interventions that there is. And D.I.R. Floortime was actually rated by them as greater quality, better outcomes, long-lasting results, without causing psychological damage and so on in the process. Because where I spoke about extrinsic reinforcers, extrinsic motivation, all these rewards destroy the intrinsic motivation, the motivation that comes from within. So, and of how rewards backfire in the long run, that ABA doesn't last, it fades away. So your child won't become independent through behaviourism. And then with behaviourism being a control system, your child doesn't quite get to lead their personal development. You know, you're shoving them in the direction when you're going in ABA. But when you're the follower of your child, following your child's lead, your child is leading their own life. They've got a sense of autonomy, they are the origin of their lives. You're managing to build relationships with them, and so on. So this model is very scientific, successful, more healthy, and this is why what the neurodiversity movement has been demanding. We've actually been wanting up-to-date models like this for autistic kids. Neurodiversity advocates are not claiming that we should not help autistic children. Basically, they're just against the cure to it. They are. They don't think that our neurotype needs to be changed. They actually agree that it's a disability, they don't deny it, but they also see that they are socially disadvantaged. So it's not due to a disability altogether, but they also see it as a difference. And as this model mentions, the I in D.I.R. is individual differences. So it actually goes into these differences of your child and nourishes them, and it helps them develop the individual differences. So the neurodiversity movement, they are demanding and they want more interventions for parents. If you just allow me to quickly look up something on my phone so I can read more out to you. How about this? Right, I quote. In an article published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in November 2020 entitled Intervention Recommendations for Children with Autism in Light of a Changing Evidence Base, they recommended that pediatricians need to consider recommending a wider range of options to parents. In regards to the changing evidence base, they reported, there has been a recent precipitous increase in both the quantity and quality of research examining interventions for young children with autism. From 2011 to 2018, the reported number of randomized clinical trials of interventions for young children with autism increased from 2 to 48, To summarise this transforming evidence base, we systematically reviewed and meta-analysed 150 reports of 130 studies, 87 of which were RCTs, which collectively reported effect sizes for 1,615 outcomes, representing 6,240 young children with autism. Several findings emerged from this research, but 2 are of direct relevance to paediatricians, directing families to services and supports following diagnosis. First, 3 intervention approaches that, at present, are not commonly recommended, have garnered more substantial empirical support from RCTs relative to behavioural interventions. These are naturalistic developmental behavioural interventions and developmental interventions. Although distinct from one another, these interventions are alike in that they are provided in children's natural context, everyday interactions with caregivers, and their learning targets are guided by early developmental sequences. These attributes may make them preferable to families, since they are less likely to disrupt and separate children from family routines than more structured, clinician-led interventions. End of quote. So, in this D.I.R. Floortime, it actually does have more evidence to it. The evidence is still increasing, and when it's saying about wanting more interventions, more options for parents, this is thanks to neurodiversity advocates and autism activists. Because as we've protested against D.I.R, this has caused them to have to make more options. The more we protested against it, the more pressure we put onto them, the more they'll have to make more options. And considering the progression that is shown there, hopefully in the near future, not too long from now, actually these other interventions which are not being insured, which are not being recommended at the minute, actually will be insured and parents will have more options. So those of you who are parents who are rather frowning on the neurodiversity movement, because your child might not be able to speak or something, we are actually fighting for you. But where I mentioned music therapy, that's another natural one, the music therapy, where it goes with your child's expressions, your child's emotions. The music therapist with your child, then helping you learn to do it with your child yourself. You're building these relationships. They are more natural. It's not about manipulating children, as is D.I.R. It doesn't have all these negative long-term effects. It doesn't backfire at your child. So that's why these more scientific, up-to-date and recent ones, and this is why they're not recommended yet, is because they are rather new. They haven't been around for too long. D.I.R has been around since the 1960s, but all these new ones came around in the 21st century, just after the autism rights movement in the UK, where the neurodiversity movement was actually began as a rebellion against D.I.R. It was meant to be a political movement, but it's rather moved beyond politics now and has taken a different meaning. But originally it was an autism rights movement, but then other disabled people joined on. That turned it to the neurodiversity movement for accepting all these individuals who are disabled. And then those of us who have actually supported neurodiversity, such as myself, we've been fighting for you so that you can actually have more options. We're not fighting to try and say that your kids don't need any help or anything. We're not trying to prevent your children from developing independence. But when we look on this model, personal development that will lead to the development of independence. But manipulation of your kids like ABA, even if it's just the playtime type, that's still manipulation. That's not going to develop independence, and it's not done by the child. The best place you can go to get some help and support is go onto somewhere like Facebook or YouTube, TikTok, or any of these social media platforms where there's autism communities. Such as I'm a member of several. I go on several autism forums online, and I provide help to parents by sharing my knowledge about autism, increasing the parents' awareness. Such as, for example, there was a mother on the forum and she was terrified. Her daughter had been diagnosed, and the daughter became so excited. She just couldn't believe that, because all before her diagnosis, this woman's daughter, her daughter was in great depression, but it just seemed so shocking to her that she could suddenly just come out of that depression and live so happily. And she was asking for help. She was asking, what does this mean? And then I responded to her because no one else seemed to have done so. No one else seemed to have been getting to her. And then once I sent my response, where I've mentioned things about special interests, where I've mentioned things about it fills them up and fuels them, makes them feel happy and fulfilled. Here's what the woman wrote back to me. I quote, "Dear Daniel, thank you so much for replying in such a kind and understanding way. Everything you have said has helped a great deal and will allow me a better understanding of my daughter. She has recently had the PC and it has made a huge improvement to her well-being. I get that it takes her to a safe place where she can switch off. The changes in her have been remarkable since her diagnosis, and I absolutely believe, as you have said, that it helps make sense of the past and helps her understand her past struggles. I really hope she will be able to fulfill her dream to go to uni and manage living alone. We will, of course, make sure that the uni are fully aware, and unis do seem very well equipped to support students these days. I am so grateful that you took the time to reply, as past diagnosis it is easy to feel lost with where to go for support. Regards and best wishes to you." End of quote. So just by I mentioning the special interest and so on, the PC was the daughter's special interest. And when you heard the mother quoted, said that makes her feel safe. It helps her turn off, switch the world off for a bit. Take a break from it. Because autistic kids in a non-autistic world, they are going to struggle. It is going to be difficult. And with socialising being something so important, but with double empathy, our social issues, we having to try harder to adapt to not upset you, and so on, it does get exhausting. So she will need a break and so on, and that really helps them switch the world off and take a break. So if you go onto autism forums where there's autistic people, just ask them any questions you've got, and you'll find voluntarily they'll come in and they'll answer your question for you. And they don't just have knowledge about autism, but they've actually got the experience. They experience autism, so they may have actually gone through what your child's gone through, or what your child is going through, and since they've gotten through it, they may be able to tell you possible solutions of how you can help your child get through it. So Autism Forums is one great place to go for if you want help and support. But ABA, that's not the greatest of places to go. Sadly, some places only do ABA, sadly. Such as most places in the US, it's ABA. Because ABA was founded in the US, it's been around for the longest intervention targeting autistic kids, but it wasn't originally to help us, which is why we had to rebel, why there's horrifying stories all over the internet, because it wasn't actually for our benefit to begin with. It wasn't for the autistic kids, and so on. So this D.I.R. Floortime, where you actually play with your child, it's less time consuming, it's more natural, it's more developmental, it's more scientific. I've already said it's less time consuming. It doesn't disrupt your family as much. It allows you to keep your family relations going in. It promotes your relationship with your children and so on, to get it better. It respects your child's diversity, so your child's individual differences, and it actually acknowledges the development, meaning they are not just doing what they can see with the naked eye, they are actually acknowledging what's going on beneath the surface. And that's what makes this model far more effective, far safer, and not only is this one better, it is actually cheaper. Because remember, ABA actually is a money scam. The therapists, they're not aware of it. They don't know about the money scam going on, because they don't get taught about all the history of ABA. So much gets hidden from them, such as I'm only aware of some of this stuff because of big books I've read, such as one by someone called Professor Alicia Broderick, who she investigated and studied 75 years worth of autism cases. So 75 years from Lee O'Connor all the way up to today is what she investigated, and that took her over 10 years of investigation. And she came to find that all along, ABA has been about capitalism. It's been about profiteering and commodification. It wasn't actually beneficial for autistic kids. I'll be doing a video about the autism industrial complex, sharing with you Professor Alicia Broderick's work, and I'll be able to, when I do that video, I'll be able to link in where she actually explains it herself, because there's a YouTube video about the autism industrial complex where Alicia Broderick herself explains her work. So you can actually listen to the author herself. So if you do manage to hang around, you'll hear about some of this history which goes on. And you will come to know and hope that we need more interventions like this one. We need more options for you. So I ask of you, don't fight against neurodiversity advocates. Don't fight against us, because we are not trying to prevent your child from being helped. We are actually trying to, like this, like the reporter read, get parents more options. We want you to have options other than ABA. We don't want you having ABA as your only option, as that is the default position at the minute. We want more like this, which are actually scientific and health-based. We want what's healthy for your children, and that's what we're fighting for. Those in the neurodiversity movement. So please, if you would support neurodiversity, that would be a great support to families of autistic people, because ABA, the leaders of it, not the therapists themselves, but the leaders of it, are right up at the top, something called the Behaviour Analyst Certification Board, is actually in association, the leaders of it, with somebody called the Judge Rottenberg Centre that does electroshock therapy on kids at very high voltages. It's in association with an autism hate group called Autism Speaks, where Autism Speaks donates lots of money to them, to ABA. They have Autism Investor Summits every April, the leaders of it. But the therapists are not aware of this, of all this money making. But it's all for the sake of the money, ABA. and that's why they're together with Autism Speaks rather than self-advocacy networks, such as where we're self-advocates, those of neurodiversity, we're advocating on behalf of your kids, wanting to get your kids more options and better options, better solutions to help them overcome their trials, overcome these debilitating traits they've got. That is what we are intending to do. So if you found this video interesting, hang around and I will share more alternative interventions and substitutes in the future. I will be doing a video sharing about the autism industrial complex, of how ABA is about making the money, and so on. I'll be providing you the evidence of it, and so on. So if you're interested in knowing this, keep an eye on my channel, and then you'll get to learn about it. And as the mother said who were quoted, just by I talking to her on the internet, she gained a better understanding of her daughter. So I advise you, if you want to understand your autistic kids more, go and have a chat with autistic people on online communities. Go talk with more autistic people and ask them any questions you've got. They'll voluntarily come in and answer you. And on these autism forums there's other parents of autistic kids as well. So there's some who are in your shoes as well on these forums. So it's the perfect place for you to go for support, to be informed, to read about experiences, to see how do autistic people communicate. It's a great place for you to go and look. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening, and please continue to support us so that we can get better options for children, get some better interventions and up to date. Thank you.